afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Propaganda, Hero Psych, Defender of the Fatherland, and here to talk about a topic, a certain thing I actually feel was a bit of a design issue in companies too. It was the inclusion of a particular type of units, pretty much all German units. Yes, be complaining about German units, but not in the way you think. Now, the issue is actually the inclusion of a specific type of unit, and a unit that essentially as a class is a bit of a problem to get right. And basically I'm talking about Wunderwaffen. Those really big or just weird, highly impractical machines of the German army, which just they don't really particularly fit into the game, are incredibly difficult to balance due to their very nature. I mean, we're talking about stuff like the Elephant Tank Destroyer or the Jagdtiger, the Sturmtiger, all of these really big, really impractical armoured fighting vehicles that easily can be replaced with something infinitely more practical and, more importantly, infinitely easier to balance. Because when you look at something like the Elephant, really big, really armoured, really slow, the question is, how do you get that right? How do you get something like that right, without making feeling overpowered, but at the same time not rubbish for the player to use? And the problem is, it's really difficult because, depending on the map size, it's either going to be, amazing or it's going to be complete garbage. For example, I barely see elephants in 1v1s because, well, it's just such a huge cost investment and it doesn't have enough impact for said cost investment in a 1v1. Part of course, just how the players play, but apparently in 4v4s, it's just too much and has been nerfed, which of course only renders it even more useless in 1v1 because, again, they had to have a tank destroyer that is heavily armoured, huge range, huge gun, and of course slow. So again, how do you balance it? And that's the trick. It's really difficult, and perhaps it might even be impossible to sort of get such a unit satisfactory. Similarly with the Jagdtiger, at least that one has sort of the saving grace of being able to bombard a bit, but even then you don't see it a lot in a 1v1, and you probably won't be seeing any more either. At the same time, as soon as you cut down some of its damage, it's going to feel less impactful because, again, it's really big, really slow, which requires it to be able to just hurt the enemy tanks fast. Otherwise, it's just going to get swarmed and destroyed, which of course further just limits its utility because that requires then the Allies have to go for really big, really small, few singular tanks, which is not particularly what the Allies are geared for. So in that regard, those heavy tank destroyers end up being balanced towards fighting the Germans and not the Allies, which is just, weird. And again, just highlights this deeply impractical nature of them. Similar with the Sturmtiger, in a way, it's more useful than the others, but at the same time, it's just not fun to play against. It moves up, shoots, wipes units, pullbacks, rinse, and repeat. It's, in that regard, again, these units don't necessarily end up feeling very fun for either side. And in some ways, either they're too good or they're not good enough. And on the receiving end, they just stop being fun. And the thing is, they could easily have chosen a lot more practical units in several cases. Like, let us look to, the Elephant. What other, really big tank destroyers did the Germans have in the Second World War? Well, we had the Nassau, and that was actually the first one. Then you had the Elephant, then you had the Jagdpanther, then you had the Jagdtiger. Those are sort of really the big sort of tank destroyers, self-propelled, sort of, worthwhile. And then, of course, the question is, well, why not just go for the Nassau? And it has a lot of the same qualities that, for example, the Elephant has. It has an 88mm gun. It's big. But more importantly, it's soft skin. It's barely got any armour. It's open-topped. That will make that thing a lot easier to balance, again, it'd still be a really big tank destroyer, but, you could easily more balance. It's, high damage potential with it being, pretty easy to counter if it gets a good flank on it. It could also then perhaps be a bit cheaper, more accessible, because it's suddenly not, obscenely tough. That way you actually see some usage in 1v1s compared to the Elephant, which is practically only if you're actually desperate, you might as well try for it because you got no other option, which is generally not the right way to go about it. But that's very much what the situation see the Elephant in. And again, the Nassau could have been balanced in such a manner, I think, that, again, pretty easily, they would be satisfactory for all sides. The Allies, again, would have some more direct counters. If your opponent screws up with it, you can be punished more easily. And the Germans, can more consider going for it, in particular on 1v1, because it would cause you to be more, sensible price level rather than just, top tier, 720 manpower or 245 fuel, which again is utterly obscene for something that's in many ways is not going to, for something in 1v1 have any remote impact. So And again, I mean, plus the Nashorn just saw service on every front much more, readily in larger numbers. Similar with the Yak, you could have gone for the Yak Panther, again, also very efficient tank destroyer. More armor than the Nashorn, faster, sure, but also not necessarily as toughly armored as the Yak Tiger. And of course, you can then run the speed. I mean, again, it's just been a more natural fit and also stand out more compared to the Yak and the Nashorn, because again, the Elephant and the Yak Tiger sort of fill both the same, really big, really slow tank destroyer. So again, that way, they could just, have a bit more room for other things, maybe again say, oh, but yeah, they hadn't come as one, so they did with the Ostwind, which now the Oberkommandist and the Wehrmacht has. I mean, that seems just self-defeating, if you're going to go for something, at least go for the one unit people like, rather than the one unit, the Ostwinds, which so many people has, been bitching about, because, they don't feel it's, particularly a good fit historically. So, I mean, it just feels like they just tend to go for the really, really big, really impractical Wunderwaffen, when in so many cases they've gone for something, more workable, neater. Something that would have been a more better fit, like, also the Sturmpanzer. Again, the 4-1 that's besides the Sturmtiger. I mean, again, they can't quite seem to get that one right. Again, really big, really impactful. Couldn't they just gone for the Grille? Again, self-propelled, roughly the same gun, could sort of work more as a tin, in which case you could have found something else, and maybe instead of the Panzerwehrmacht with a fit in the Nashorn, they could have made a lot better fits, but every single time they had the choice, they went for the biggest, most armoured, and most tricky to balance unit they could have possibly gotten their hands on. Now, man, they can't get the Panther right still. It should be considerably easier in some ways. Yet, there we are again, they just keep choosing these sort of high specialists within the German army, which were highly armoured, highly impractical, again, also really, really good at one purpose, but because they can't be really good at that purpose, they don't become it, because that would be too good when they also have that much armour. So it sort of has these, weird design results and balance, effects, because they just kept choosing the biggest and most impractical Wunderwaffen possible, rather than again just looking through the rest of the Wehrmacht arsenal and looking for something, that could overall be a better fit, in terms of balancing. So that's really one thing I honestly do dislike about Communist 2, and, I really feel like they could have done, well, a lot better. Because, I mean, you're not going to see them put something really, really impractical with the Allies, no. For the Germans, it just seems like almost a competition just to choose the most impractical pieces of Wunderwaffen they could possibly stuff in, and then just sort of, have them sort of just clog up the Wehrmacht and Oberkommandowist, tech trees and commanders, rather than just give them something a bit more practical, which could also, been more balanced and, overall more fun for everyone, because most of the time they're not particularly fun to play with or play against, which, is not particularly, shall we say, fun at all. So honestly, I mean, again, it's obviously too late for companies too. I mean, they're not going to suddenly go, well, we just so happen to have this Nashorn from Companies 2 development. We just, for some reason, scrapped it, but it's technically fully voiced, fully animated, fully textured, and by sheer coincidence, we also got all these new textures for it, skins. I mean, they're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. Neither with the Yak Panther. Technically, people found the Yak Panther in the files, by the way. So that one would at least be slightly more feasible. Though I'd still say highly unlikely, unless like this undecided, to switch all maybe efforts from Dawn or 3. Just go, alright, this ship sunk. It's the Titanic, except worse. Because Imperial Dane warned us a year ahead of time that this was going to turn into the Titanic. So it's basically Titanic, but worse, because we could have just heeded his warnings and avoided the Titanic. Thusly, it's Titanic, but the worse. So again, that's not likely to happen either. But, say for Company Heroes 3, they could maybe stop going for the worst conceivable German units to balance. And instead, go for the ones that are easier to balance. Again, Nashorns, Grille, which again are also very cool units in their own way. Like, they're really cool. In fact, they're more common in a lot of the Wunderwaffen, but, because they're just not really big, really clunky, and apparently really difficult to balance, they just don't get in. Which is just really sad and really awkward, because, again, the German arsenal had a lot of cool stuff. Hell, they could have gone for a lot of half-track variants, which also had a lot of cool guns going on for them. So that would really be my big hope for companies for less Wunderwaffen, less or more actual Waffen. Less Wunder, more get stuff done Waffen. More bread and butter, less styrofoam glazing, because no one's going to be able to eat it anyway. Sure, it might look pretty, but it's pretty toxic for you. So that would sort of be my big hope for companies C, because overall I think everyone would benefit a lot more from more balanceable and more fun German units, rather than these things they just can't seem to get right, and almost comic extent refuse to get right. Like the elephant. I really dislike the elephant. I really sincerely wish they'd gone for the Nashorn. I so wish they would gone for the Nashorn. That would have been so much more fun. Plus they could have kept that one non-doctrinal. If only. A man can dream. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you agree with it. If you do, subscribe, like, share, comment on. If you like what I do consider donating or pledging on Patreon. Links to the video description. Every donation, every pledge helps me a ton with making these videos. Of course, a big thanks to all those who already do. So thank you all, and see you all another time for another video. Cheers.